Hi, welcome to Northumbria University. Seaton and I are both assistant professors in interior design here. We're going to discuss how we set a student-led brief to create a studio space that really focused on improving education for designers, with the aim of providing a place that is fit for purpose, responds to current research and the demands of our student and pedagogic needs through a place hacking approach.
The design school is the sort of place that might be assumed as being up to date and correct in terms of the physical learning spaces and studios in which it operates. It goes without saying that we would learn from and follow the latest research and workplace practices in the pursuit of elite learning environments that enable staff and students to deliver, learn and come together in the pursuit of spaces that enable, encourage and enhance that learning journey. Gensler, Architecture and design are very much involved in the design of learning environments and recognise that. Education institutions now face many of the same challenges and opportunities as other organisations. Campus buildings and their settings need to perform at a high level, both as evolving platforms for learning and as components of well-defined real estate strategies. They believe that education institutions are long-lived and they reflect a tradition that impels them to secure their future. This makes them the natural advocates of sustainability and stewardship. Their focus on learning makes them aware of how the design of the physical environment supports it.
You would assume from the above that the learning environments in our universities are fit for purpose, but is anything ever as good as it can be? As designers, our role is to question everything, whether it be the humblest of pens, to the chairs that we sit on, or the clothes that we wear, to the physical environments that we occupy. With all of the best intentions, there'll always be room for improvement, whether in the design or in the sense of context applied to it.
Recognising and accepting this as a positive enables us to be honest in our analysis of these spaces, with a view to adaptation that will enable them to perform at a high level for the benefit of all. It is often easy for staff or students to walk past or operate within a studio environment and think everything is fine or even good, based upon previous performance and aligned indicators.
See, you know how I like the plants? Improve. I can't stroke a plant.
You love a plant.
I do love a plant. So what if we took those design and research skills and engaged them like through the eyes of the urban explorer, and then we could really interrogate the methods by which we deliver design education and the students experience it. So this would then create like that symbiosis of the designed physical environment, design education and human behaviours. And that essentially was the starting point, wasn't it, for our research group, Reside, which was Reside in Design Education. And the journey to the Reside Lab, which was sitting and began approximately about 12 years ago.
Yeah, 12 years ago, so we probably a year into moving into the new design school at Northumbria. And we moved around the building a little bit, the programme had changed. We'd gone from a 50-50 course shared with architecture into a course that was solely delivered in the design school. The numbers increased and we needed to move studio.
Yeah, and I think along with that, if you remember, we had to re-specify the furniture appropriate to the needs of the programme. So we were luckily able to visit the respective showrooms, things like Vitra, Herman Miller in London, where we could check the quality, the ergonomic aspect, the acoustic factors, and ultimately we submitted a specification that we were happy with. But rather than just pick so many, go by the standard formulas of so many desks, so many chairs per so many students, we were really wanting to push that further as commercial interior designers, and look at how we could design an environment that engaged students and staff, improved attendance, attainment and progression ultimately.
Okay, so we were keen to not get lost in the furniture catalogue or easy solutions to or easy compromises, but really do the research and due diligence around the right spec that would create an environment for students that they would want to occupy, increase attendance and so on.
Yeah, I think and enable them to learn and move towards professional behaviours and industry was important. And it's all very much questions and metrics of the now, but this was 12 years ago, and we didn't just specify the furniture, we actually created specific zones with aligned specific task furniture that enabled the students to operate in ways that were appropriate to their best learning methods and their comfort zones as well. So we were creating bespoke learning environments with breakout areas and nods to biophilic principles through colours, textures, soft boundaries, bringing together our knowledge alongside the specifiers. Who knew this was going to be such a big thing in workplace design, but it would never really fully engage at that time in education spaces. So it turns out that we were the trailblazers with our rudimentary studio design that actually featured many of the settings and the intentions of Herman Miller's research, which was later entitled Living Office.
Okay, so moving forward a few years, as spatial designers, we know that the research and from our own experience that the environment plays a huge part, particularly in the learning process. Student numbers and demand for programs and overall demographic of applicants began to change for us. We found that our studio space was becoming less than suitable. We started to suspect that this was having an impact on attention, engagement in particular, probably retention, things like that. We had a space that had to be very flexible. We needed to make that happen. So the same desk would be used for drawing, computer work, model making, large-scale technical drawings, and would be changed from first to second to third year throughout the week based upon what they needed.
Yeah, and initially we started to make some small changes, creating dedicated spaces within a single studio that we had at the time to improve storage, to give the students a sense of ownership and belonging, which in turn created a sense of community, and that was mainly through the spatial layout. Without any formal measurements as such, it became very apparent that these small changes were making a big difference, and we began to see like close to 100% attendance throughout the final year of studies. More significantly and measurable, we did change the mindset, I think, of a group of who were quite angry and dispirited students at the time in semester one who felt cheated by COVID, to a group that then reported 100% satisfaction on the National Student Survey by the following February, with qualitative comments relating to key implementations made in the studio which had improved their sense of well-being, feeling valued and enhancing motivation and engagement, which was great.
Yeah, that felt like an achievement, I have to say, at that point in time.
Yeah.
As a result of the success we'd had with the studio, we then developed the Reside Lab. We wanted to make this more of a formal research study, and rather than driving it as a staff teaching research team, we created a module for final year students to analyse and critique their own education spaces. Investigate the current research evidence on design of both workplace and education spaces, and ask them to propose solutions for studios that would enable them to perform to their very best. This would include several key features, many of which were already known to impact positively on well-being in the workplace. This was called the Reside Lab, and the students would work with a test space to understand and develop it. They would essentially place hack their own studios.
Yeah, so not only was this a learning exercise for the students, but it was also recognised with an enhancement award by the university. The competitive education enhancement projects focus on developing an educational base for Northumbria's distinctive pedagogy of experiential and authentic inquiry-based learning, including how these promote equality, diversity and inclusion.
Yeah, exactly. And as a programme, our USP is working with real clients and design companies on live briefs. We've always done that. We had already engaged in workshops with Oliver Heath, who is a global expert in biophilic design.
Hence plants.
We like plants. As well as Herman Miller, who have an international reputation for workplace research. Herman Miller, now rebranded as Miller Knoll, have produced a series of reports relating to workplace design with their strategy guidelines called Living Office.
Yeah, which largely related to how the expectations of workers is changing, the tools of work are changing, etc. And the new landscape of work that they proposed. But Miller Knoll also then produced a similar toolkit of settings, didn't they, called Living Campus for universities. So our intention was to take knowledge from both aspects and ask the students to review this critically and develop a series of settings for their own education spaces. Having conducted the pre-occupancy evaluation with students from a previous cohort, the opportunity was there to examine what exists, what works, what doesn't, and what recommendations could make a significant difference to the negative aspects raised in that.
For a long period, we've had great relationship with local workplace practice work pattern. Primarily specifiers, they've evolved to a lot more than that, but have supported us professionally and educationally for more than 20 years now. With their support, we were able to trial various ranges and types of classroom furniture, including large-scale soft seating to individual micro stations with adjustable height and furniture with varying degrees of enclosure and acoustic isolation. Students were able to move these around the studio, testing them in different configurations and settings to evaluate the overall layout over a period of 3 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, it was a funny time when we got all that furniture delivered, I'm not going to lie. But in terms of the brief the students were given, analysing and incorporating the existing research through the settings, layout and design, we asked them to consider and, where possible, implement several practical aspects. Number 1, inclusivity and accessibility. Could the space be easily navigated? Did it address cultural needs and ergonomic requirements, such as flexible layout, height of tables, etc.? And does it address diverse learning styles? Number 2, access to power outlets. This can inform the choice of seating preference and has been shown to increase satisfaction. Number 3, individual versus collaborative learning. What settings are fixed and what could be reconfigured? Number 4, activities. As an interior design studio with model making and material sampling, these spaces to address certain activities are needed. And 5, technology, regarding the access and visibility of projector screens, small screens, Wi-Fi and fixed PC monitors or laptop use. So just going back to Gensler again from their report, Learning is Everywhere, I think the following quote is really key to what we were trying to do. Most education institutions today need to do more with less. They want their spaces to work harder. Doing so requires a careful alignment of architecture and pedagogy. What used to have hierarchical activity confined to lecture halls and classrooms has cracked wide open.
Following on from the literature review, a series of much more intangible elements were required. Number 1, addressing basic needs. How could students feel secure and have a sense of autonomy and purpose? Number 2, sense of belonging. Mill and All have shown that this leads to increased engagement in learning, increased confidence to speak up and participate, and increased success as measured by knowledge acquisition, retention, accuracy, creativity and problem solving, and high-level reasoning. All things very design orientated. 3, sense of ownership. Could the students build permission to allow place hacking and mess and feel comfortable to shift position and setting during class time? Were they able to creatively use forgotten spaces to collaborate? A sense of ownership has been shown to create improvement in well-being, particular, and is the most popular way to tell if the design is successful. 4, comfort. Feeling comfortable can lead to less distractions with an improvement in focus. The pilot study of sample furniture. We have one opportunity to test this, but temperature and lighting were also being considered. We also asked for the branding and decor to be addressed, since learning can be positively influenced if a space reflects the casual comforts of homes, cafes, etc.
This was a big ask, but Gensler's report on Design for Education states, Gensler's education architects have a particular interest in making buildings and spaces work harder. There's a fundamental willingness to challenge the limits that institutions set for themselves and extend the realm of the possible. As one practice leader described it, design has the ability to make 1 + 1 = 3. And that may not be good math, but it definitely adds up for our university and college clients. So students spent 6 weeks on the project, working in pairs, and produced a series of spatial layouts for 3 design studios, accommodating 3 year groups with an average of 50 students in each year. The design also incorporated the adjacent circulation spaces, the corridor, lift, lobby, etc., 2 seminar rooms and an outdoor terraced area, currently unused. And they were able to propose retaining individual studios or blending year groups on the basis of their evidence with justification. The plans reflected the settings proposed for different activities, and they also produced a design scheme with material, furniture and lighting specification and a set of brand guidelines.
As researchers, we're at the same time evaluating other key aspects of the literature and research, such as active learning. Since they were focusing their knowledge on how they themselves learned, How did this affect engagement and retention? Student motivation. What factors beyond the teaching resources and learning materials available could be seen to contribute to this? Throughout the module, students all had regular involvement with tutors both formally and informally. Throughout this, we could enhance the student experience and guide expectations. Workplace readiness. As the project progressed, we were able to encourage and qualitatively measure complex problem solving, critical thinking and negotiation.
In terms of observational results, at first the students seemed quite reticent about taking ownership of their space and making any changes to it. As interior design students, they rarely, if ever, see the hypothetical designs manifested. So the initial work, I guess, was more theoretical and applied at a computer or through sketching. But once the sample furniture arrived, the studio developed that change in energy that was needed, and their learning became more active then. Tutors, like ourselves, had to encourage or initiate the changes in the layout at times, but some students did feel positively empowered to lead on this themselves, which benefited their own learning and ultimately their proposals for the studio design.
So following on from this, practical issues were identified and solutions proposed either in situ in the classroom or in the submitted schemes. There was a clear problem with location and quantity of power outlets, which led to ongoing frustrations. Temperature was beyond individual control, but the overhead suspended lighting was universally deemed an issue. Referring to biophilic principles, students generally orientated their layouts to incorporate external views on its natural light with a range of standing and desk-based lighting requested. A model making area was identified as essential and a small cafe area was created. Dedicated small tiered seminar spaces were suggested in most schemes, responding to the variety of furniture tested, which included soft sofas up to tall stools. Storage was a major issue, yet was not particularly well addressed across the year, the difficulty being a general lack of space beyond the tables and chairs. The student began to understand the need for focused learning versus informal practical activities and the need for changes in acoustics to support this. We saw floor-standing whiteboards being used as partitions to divide space, which were then used for thinking out loud, improving collaborative engagement.
So really importantly as well, we saw improved attendance from the quieter students or those who found the previous environment overwhelming. Once individual acoustically separated workspaces were offered, and it allowed these students more informal tutor contact in particular. We saw new behaviours in the studio, more engagement with students outside of their immediate peer groups, and a better, more informal relationship with the staff, which was great. The corridor circulation space was recognised as kind of a key opportunity for branding and programme identity, and a small nook previously underused was given a range of solutions, including a mini library or a tea point, which might encourage chance meetings and conversations. Students created a series of proposals for an interactive yet flexible space to support their learning and our teaching, and the results were great.
When choosing a university, the appearance of the campus affected the decision of between 62 and 80% of applicants in a study by weight. Given the huge choice available now to students and their needs and requirements, the spaces that they're going to populate become even more significant. Following the project, we have continued to implement and evaluate change in our studio, covering a number of points. Our goal is to create a strong identity for the programme, and we've already implemented brand guidelines designed by one of the student pairs during this project to inspire the students and give a sense of ownership.
We've created a series of settings based on the proposals and are continuing to test these.
We have addressed practical issues, in particular the shortage and poor placement of power outlets.
We've got a dedicated breakout cafe space with facilities to store and prepare food and drinks, understanding the financial impact on students.
We have installed a number of biophilic elements and strategies, including the obvious plants, but also through texture, colour and external sightlines.
Various lighting options are now available, from task lamps to softer ambient lighting.
And the learning settings include makerspace, collaborative space, seminar spaces, individual workstations, supported through a range of seating options and table configurations.
So we focus primarily on the final year studio space so far, and both staff and students all agree that this is better as a separate contained space rather than blending with the other year groups. The final year students' needs and work demands are quite different, and there was a strong desire that this was addressed and retained. In semester one of this year, attendance and engagement was excellent, We did find, however, that the students chose a fixed seat and stayed there for the majority of this academic year. Yet they asked for tasks and activities that might help them mix more effectively with students from other tables. So I think there's still work to be done on improving their confidence in shifting positions and settings and embracing agility. But the studio has been well and truly hacked, and despite implementing various storage options, we are still limited with this, so there is a tendency for a lot of mess. But on the whole, they seem to be comfortable with this, even if the staff are not.
And moving forward, the next step of the analysis will be to refine and develop a series of our own settings that are proven to be transferable to other programs within the design school, but also beyond. We are currently running a post-occupancy evaluation survey which will help inform us further to create a list of our own principles to guide the process. We must also not forget to take into account that the experiences of staff and their ability to teach effectively is also as important as the students.
Absolutely.